Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill still seemed miles apart on a deficit reduction agreement, with 8 days to go before a self-mandated deadline. NewsHour congressional correspondent Kwame Holman reports.
In the Senate today, party leaders continue to point fingers at each other as the supercommittee closed in on a week to go to strike a deficit reduction deal. The majority leader, Democrat Harry Reid, insisted Republicans won't accept a mix of tax increases and spending cuts.
So far, I've not seen indication that Republicans are willing to agree to this balanced approach. Democrats are not going to take a unfair, unrealistic load directed toward domestic discretionary spending, or I should say domestic discretionary spending, and take it away from the military.
The 12-member committee, split evenly between the parties, is tasked to find at least $1.2 trillion in deficit cuts over the next decade. And Senate Republican Lamar Alexander argued his side does want a deal and has made concessions.
Republicans have put revenues on the table. Anyone who knows and understands the Republican Party knows that the proposal that was made last week by the Republican members of the supercommittee represents a substantial departure from what we'd normally be comfortable voting for.
The supercommittee has been at work for more than 2 months, largely out of public view. The members' mandate is to reach an agreement by November 23rd. If the panel fails, the same law that created it requires deep automatic cuts in domestic and defense spending beginning in 2013. That prospect has unnerved Pentagon leaders. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta warned again Monday of devastating consequences if the automatic cuts go through. In a letter to Republican Senator John McCain, Panetta said, "We would have the smallest ground force since 1940, the smallest number of ships since 1915, and the smallest air force in its history." As the deadline looms, it was widely reported the supercommittee may claim savings of $700 billion no longer needed for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan over the next 10 years. Another proposal up for consideration, a Republican plan for a net tax revenue increase of nearly $300 billion in exchange for lower tax rates. House Speaker John Boehner called that a fair offer.
I think that reforming our tax code, both on the business side and personal side, will make America more competitive and produce more economic growth. And so I do believe that reforming the code is a step in the right direction. The details of how we get there, frankly, I think are yet to be worked out.
But 2 Republican presidential candidates, Texas Governor Rick Perry and former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, signaled they wouldn't like to see any plan that raises taxes. Meanwhile, there was bipartisan cooperation toward keeping the government operating in the short term. Last night, leaders agreed to spend $180 billion for 5 cabinet departments and a stopgap bill to fund government operations through December 16th. The current funding runs out at midnight Friday.
We talked with one member of the supercommittee last night, Maryland Democrat Chris Van Hollen. We've extended invitations to all of the Republicans to appear on the NewsHour. None was available this evening, but we hope to bring you an interview with one of them this week.